Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report, wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube. God bless you, man. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. Folks, I feel your pain because that was a brutal one today, 14-7 to the Giants in the Meadowlands. Another loss up here, another crazy loss up here where things just go wrong and they snowball, and this team continues to dig holes that they cannot emerge from. They're slow to adjust all the time, and that again becomes a problem, whether it's in the season, whether it's in a game, whatever. And now they're sitting here at 3-4, and you wonder, where the hell is this going? You may already know. Listen, there's a lot of games left. We know that. And that's one of the things I asked Ron Rivera. Do you feel like the season's slipping away? And his point was, you've got a game this week to play against Philly. They're not going to sit there and think that it's all hope is lost, because they're 3-4. They have 10 games left. They have to think a different way. They know they've turned it around the last couple of years. However, when you lose at home to the Chicago Bears the way they did, and then you come up here and lose again to the Giants the way they did, you have to start really questioning a lot of things about what's going on with this operation. And we'll get into a lot of that in a minute. And I'm going to start off here. There was obviously frustration in the locker room. If you haven't seen the clip that JP Finley from NBC or from Monumental NBC tweeted out, a little interview with John Allen, go check it out, because it kind of sums up everybody's feelings. And he asked him if he was tired, if he's frustrated. And he's like, I'm sick, is bleep. Yeah. And a lot of bleeps in there, it's bleeping tired of this bleep. And there were a number of things like that. And it's like, bleep, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this bleep. I'm tired of this bleep, bleeping this, bleeping that. And I think it sums up where he's at now. You can say, and he said he goes, basically what his frustration has been. He said, it's been the same bleeping thing for 7 years. And he's right. And you know what? We all know it's been longer than 7 years. And that's why the fan base is as frustrated as they are, and they should be. This has become unacceptable. You cannot keep doing this and expecting fans to keep showing up, buying tickets, doing this, supporting it. You've got to give them a reason to believe. And every time you guys start to wonder, is it time to believe, something like this happens, and it can't keep going like this. So it's up to them to give you guys a reason to come back, and they haven't done it. It has to be more than just, hey, there's a new owner in town. It just can't be as simple as that, because it's up to them to get on the field and win you back and show that they're headed in the right direction. Like I said, there's plenty of time left. We know that, and they've turned around before when you don't expect it. And you have a game coming up against Philly. You would not expect that. Is this a game where they turn it around? I don't know. What I do know is they have to play a hell of a lot better and play and coach a lot better than they have to this point this year. So, and again, I don't know how you guys are doing it. I appreciate you guys sticking with me. And I know, the more it goes like this, the fewer you guys are going to stick around and listen. So it's frustrating for me too, knowing that, because when you do this, you want to talk about football. What you want to, I love talking about football. I love talking about X's and O's and diving into stuff and wanting to write about games that matter in December. Nobody wants to be doing this. So covering this, because it's just not as much. It's just not as enjoyable. And, you want to see, and it's going back and forth, whatever, all these years, it just becomes repetitive, and they've got to give you a reason to show that this time maybe it will go differently down the road. But to this point, they haven't given you that reason, because the same stuff keeps happening. I think they have a young quarterback who has some promise, who could do something, but we may never know. And he's been sacked 40 times already. Yes, a lot of it's his fault. Yes, some of it's on the offensive line too. Yes, it's also on the play calling, and that was highly evident in the first half today. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But to me, I'm not going to sit here and tell you shouldn't be frustrated, or tell you that, oh, well, there's hope because of this. They've got to show it to everybody, man. So you've got to start, and it's got to start by winning games, by playing well, by winning a game like this. I thought, and I told you on my prediction show, I thought this was going to be a very tough game. I didn't take this as an assumed W, because first of all, it's the NFL. You look around every week. Buffalo had to rally to beat these guys last week, and it took a goal line stand to finish them off. So I thought it was going to be tough. But man, I thought you would come out with a W because you are playing an undermanned team with a backup quarterback. Now that backup quarterback was effective enough at times throughout the game to really make it difficult for these guys to do anything, but still only scored 14 points. But I did think it was going to be tough because games up here always are. And, I don't know that this team is in a place where they can just say, oh, an assumed W. They're not that good. So I don't think there's any team in the league where they can feel that way against, nor should they. And, so that's why I thought it was going to be tough. I did not expect them to lose, but I certainly thought it was a possibility because, I told you, like Tyrod Taylor is going to take more shots down the field. He did just that. They still had guys who could hurt them. My fear was that the offense wouldn't get enough going against this defense. The pressure would really cause some issues, and that would leave the Giants offense the ability to get a couple big plays to then turn things around. But again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you not to, swing back here, but to tell you not to be frustrated. You should be. You should expect a hell of a lot more for what you guys have gone through over a couple decades. And I think, this team has got to reward you at some point. And I do think, just because the ownership changes doesn't mean everything goes away overnight. This is a franchise that I would describe as in transition, because you've got the ownership. Now the ownership is evaluating all this football side and all the business side. So until they get to their decision about what direction they want to take it, it's still going to be a transitional exercise here for that. And sometimes you get in those situations and you get in a situation where there's, you got a new owner, you got different factions going, you wonder how that all plays out, especially if the season starts to go awry. And at 3-4, it's inching toward that way. And you can sit there and think, well, it's over. That's fine. But again, 10 games left and, we'll see where it goes. But we all know what we've seen through 7 games. It hasn't been nearly good enough to sit there and say that you're going to get a lot more time to get this thing right. But that's where they're at. And when you get into these situations, when things are going, is it going to be, will that cause what kind of stress will that cause within the organization as different people are going to start jockeying? This is what happens in situations like this. People start jockeying for, position, right? And, blame game, whatever it is. So that's all the stuff that you have to guard against behind the scenes to make sure that this doesn't go awry and, in a really bad way. But again, it's a franchise that's in transition, and the football side has to prove that they can get this turned around. And, you've got to prove it. This is a prove it league. We all know that. They paid Daron Payne because he produced. They paid John Allen because he produced. Coaching staff and the football side is going to have to produce in order to keep going, because that's just the way this league is. And there are a lot of good people in there, but if you don't get it going, that's what is going to eventually happen. And again, 10 games left. There's a long way to go, and we'll see where they go. And of course, like I know everybody's going to be screaming for changes now. No changes going to be made because there's no changes in house that they can make. There's just, so that's not even a road to go down. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing is you have the trade deadline coming up soon. And I know there was a report about Chase Young and Montez Sweat. Like, the thing that is, first of all, teams get calls all the time on players, all the time. And I think there's some discrepancy here about who's actually making those calls. And, talking to some people here, it's people have been calling them for months about some of these guys, months, not just now, it's for months. The trade deadline is just a deadline. It doesn't mean that people start getting more serious now. They're calling teams about guys for months. So this has been an ongoing thing. And the only way I ever thought that anybody would get moved is if you got in a situation where you're, let's say, 3-5, which is now a realistic possibility. And, then what? Then where do you go? And I think that's the danger right now, is where they're at, is then do you do something like that? Do you start to listen to different offers or whatever? I don't know. Because they're not thinking 3-5. They've got to be thinking 4-4, but we all know what's ahead. So, anyways, that's the perilous spot they're in. And the problem sometimes with these games, and I always hear this, that it's about, oh, they play down to their competition. I don't think they play down to their competition. I think this is their competition. This is where they're at in their development. They haven't been good enough to string together good games in a row for a season for a long time. And it's not just this regime, it's been like that for a while. And as you know, and that's why I think it's so frustrating for everybody who's involved with this. Today, that first half was as bad. I mean, listen, I'd say the Chicago first half was as bad as any I can remember. That game was as bad as any I can remember. This first half was abysmal. And, listen, it wasn't the defense gave up a couple touchdowns. That's all they gave up. But they gave up, I think it was about 256 yards in the first half, only 100 in the second half. But 256 in the first half to this team is unacceptable. Unacceptable. And I know like Tyrod Taylor can do this and this. They had 5 guys on their offensive line who were not the starters a couple of weeks ago. No, I don't think anybody was starting at their original spot. I think they had one starter on there who was moved to a different position. And, Tyrod Taylor was under some duress, was sacked 4 times, but Saquon Barkley averaged 3.7 yards per carry. That's good against this front. And it's not like he had one really long run. It was as long as it was 12 yards. So there was a consistency there that they needed and they got. And that's something that, I was a little bit surprised at how well they ran. It wasn't a great game on the ground for them, but it was an effective game on the ground for them. And that's all they needed. Now, not having Barton in there, certainly, you could, however that impacted them. I think it probably hurt a little bit more in the pass game with Mayo in coverage. That's not his strength. We know that. But it was not acceptable in the first half anyways. For example, the Giants entered the game with 14 pass plays of 20 yards or more this season. They had 7 in this game, 7 plays of 20 yards or more. How does that happen? That's just too many. They let Tyrod Taylor throw for 279 yards in this game. Now, again, it's funny because I talked to someone before the game. They were more worried about facing Tyrod Taylor than if they had faced Daniel Jones because of his ability to make plays. And he did extend some plays. He did get outside the pocket and hurt them at times. And that's like Daniel Jones obviously can do that, but they felt like Taylor was maybe a little bit more elusive when he would get out there and looked for bigger plays down the field. And that's what he did. And I warned you, you can't, he could get outside and make plays. He was a guy that could throw down the field, and he did. And that was a difference on some of those drives. It was also, so one of the things that you noticed early on, this is where some of the frustration is look at the offensive players for Washington. Look at that second drive of the game for the Giants. The Commanders were playing some pressure. They know that if they just drop Taylor back on some 5-step drops in play action, all that it could be trouble. So they weren't really doing that. So on the second drive, they just threw a deep fade to Jalen Hyatt, 33-yard gain. Now they end up missing a field goal on that drive, but it was a 3rd down play and a big crucial play. But it's a 1-2 step drop and just go. That's how you beat pressure. That's how you help your line. And that's something that Washington was not doing in the first half. And that's, that's adjusting, that's coaching. And that's what they did. And they did that consistently in the first half. There were times where you'd look and say, yeah, the line's got to get more pressure here. Yeah, they got to do this better here. But there were more, I'm going to guess more, and I'd have to go back and watch the game again, more 6-7 man protections for the Giants in that first half to help just take a step and throw it down the field. You got coverage up. That's what you do. And that's what they did on that play. That's what you do. And I think it's also, again, the consistent ground game. The defense tried a few different things. Again, they only held them to 14 points. You should win a game when you hold a team to 14 points. And you can say the defense could have and should have played better, but they still held them to 14 points. You should win any game in the NFL that you hold a team to 14 points. They used different things. They used Khalik Hudson in that 4-3 look early in the game and throughout the game. They did use Emmanuel Forbes. They used Quan Martin. Quan Martin had a really good start. They lost Barton, and again, I don't know any update on Barton other than he had an ankle injury and his left foot was in a boot in the locker room after the game. So don't have an updated status on him, and we'll get that on Monday or Wednesday, whenever that is. And even with all the sacks for Washington, you can say Howell's got to get rid of the ball. There are times where I'm looking at it as like, I don't know when he's getting rid of the ball, because there's no chance to get rid of the ball. I mean, it was just brutal. And you can look at the offensive line and say, okay, they've got to do better. Obviously, there was a lot of pressure up the middle. It was not a good game for them at all either. But I also was clear that the Giants were just doing whatever they wanted on defense in the first half. And on offense, it was just, to be honest, they were really slow to adjust offensively. And I don't think I know I'm not the only one who thinks that. I know there are people in the locker room who definitely think that. And there were too many times in the first half where it felt like, and this is something I'm going to go back and look for, a 5-step drop off play action. And Howell would turn around and hit that plant step, and now he's under duress and has to get out of there. It wasn't like he was just sitting there holding. Oh, now I'm just going to duck and take a sack. It was 5-step, boom, plant. Here comes the pressure. It's a stunt. It's a just bowling over guys in the middle. I mean, the interior, and there were mistakes all over the place. The line was getting called for penalties. So they did not have a good game. But when you look at what the Giants, how they adjusted with their line, and what Washington took a while to do with its line, not until the second half, like you realize that was a big difference in the game. Listen to what Terry McLaurin, what he said after the game.
But we didn't execute like our preparation, like we tried to prepare for this week. So you got to give them credit for their aggressiveness. Second half, I felt like we came out a lot better. When you get those opportunities, when teams are blitzing like that, at least one-on-one opportunities. I felt like we got to that late. So hopefully going forward, we can just get to it a little earlier and give us a chance to make plays down the field. But at the end of the day, we still have opportunities, receiver-wise. We just got to continue to be better, separating against man, making contested catches, and helping Sam out, whether it's signals or just a little things throughout the game or throughout a certain look that could really give him comfortability that he can really drive the ball. So, that one sucked for sure. I think that's the strength of my game. I'm constantly, trying to work with EB and Bobby and our offensive staff to just continue to give me those chances down the field, because I think go routes and fades are extremely pivotal in the offense, especially, when they're blitzing like that. It gives you an opportunity to make plays down the field. And a lot of those go routes, we got guys from me, Deami, Curtis, Jahan, Pringle. We got guys who can really win down the field, and I think that really allows the offensive line to not have to hold up as long, because fades or goes 1, 2, 3 balls up. You know what I mean? So it's hard for a D-line to get that pressure, but it was a big play for us at that time. I feel like it kind of came a little late, but it gave us some momentum. And my teammates are always ask me that we need a play from you. I'm just trying to be ready when my number's called to make that play, and I think it was big in that moment. But I would definitely like to see us to continue to get those up early, because I think it really forces defenses to play more honest. They can't blitz and play. The safeties are at the 10, 12 yards. They can't do that if you're beating them down the field. So I think we saw that. That's the reason in the second half they started softening up a little bit, because we were getting behind them. So I'm going to continue to work on my route running, my releases, to give the quarterback a chance to make those plays. And in those situations, I got to come down with it, which I want to continue to do.
Is it tough for you when you don't get involved until the third quarter?
It definitely is, but I know it's not just about myself, but at the same time, I know what I bring to the table. My teammates trust me. Like I said, they're always looking to me, when things are going on, like, you need to play, we trust you to get our offense going, and I feel that for myself. I prepare for that moment. I feel that's why I'm here, and I want to continue to be that for this offense, and I want to be that for 4 quarters, and like I said, just continue to communicate with EB and the offensive staff of being ready, and when those balls come up, I got to come down with them, which I feel like I did. So I definitely want to continue to have those opportunities. I feel like it really gives juice to our offense, It really gets us going, and they're big plays that allow us to flip the field.
Thanks, Derek.
Still, in spite of all this was a winnable game. Do you feel there was a missed opportunity here?
Say it again? Sorry.
Do you feel there was a missed opportunity here? This was still a winnable game.
Oh, most definitely. When you get down in the red zone, especially the low red, you have a chance to tie the game. The possession before that, if we would have scored a touchdown there, then we have a chance to, it'd be 14-14. We got a chance to win the game. We may not need a touchdown. So every time you get in the red zone, we got to come away with points. And unfortunately, we didn't come away with 3 or 7. You want to come away with 7, and we didn't do that. So it's hard to win games when you get down in the red zone. You don't execute at a high level. But, that's on us to figure out how we get that done going into next week against another good team.
Appreciate it, Terry.
Thank you.
And that's a player who's being very diplomatic, and that's McLaurin. But he's being diplomatic on it. But I'll say it, like, they needed to adjust sooner. And other players would say, like, they talked about some of the adjustments. They did do some more sprint rollouts and move the pocket a little bit. But you got to start that early, because Sam Howell's getting pressured early in the game, and they're just teeing off on guys. And what happens when you throw some of those fades against, like, someone said they'd seen, that was the most man press coverage they'd seen all year, and it was legit. I mean, Banks was on McLaurin a lot of the day, and I like that kid, that rookie. But if you get that one-on-one situation with McLaurin, you got to give him a chance to win. You've got to throw a few more of those crossing routes. That's how they got some big plays in the second half as well. And those are things that they weren't doing in the first half. And that it was like they had this game plan for what they thought they were going to be, and it's not how it turned out to be. And I think, part of it, I wonder, this is something we talked about in the offseason, throughout the summer. Where is Eric Bieniemy as a play caller? And this game is not just on him. I mean, I think the offensive adjustments, well, of course that's him. But, listen, the defense has had its own issues. The defense has underachieved all year, or a lot of the year. And again, 14 points, you should win. But that's a team that, I mean, look what they were missing. And not just the quarterback. I mean, Daniel Jones is just whatever, right? But there's so much on that offensive front, and they're still able to run the ball. So there are issues there on defense. We know that. So I'm not absolving that. But with Bieniemy, the reason I bring him up, because he's the young play caller. I know he did some of it in KC. He hasn't been as responsible as he has been for this. When you have Andy Reid, you're going to make an adjustment, and you're going to listen to what Andy Reid says. So in this case now, everything is on him. And so that's the thing, that where does he get to from here on out? How does he adjust to things, knowing that? And, what kind of input does he get? Does he listen? Does he listen to the players? Does he listen? What is going on there? So I think that's going to be something to watch as we get to the second half, is how does he do? Because again, he is a young play caller. I remember Sean McVay going through stuff when he was a play caller. It takes some time. So, but that's where they're at with it. But they're going to have to adjust very soon, because if not, the season will absolutely slip away, and they're going to be in danger of that happening real soon if they don't start getting it turned around pretty darn fast. And then it's like, then guys need to hold up. I mean, sometimes he's going to call a play and the offensive line's not holding up, or Howell might miss a pass. The interception, that's on Howell. That play is there. The play is there. He doesn't make the throw. And I think Howell wondered after the game if the ball was tipped. It didn't look like he had a chance to follow through, and maybe that affected it, because the Dotson is open. On the last play of the game, on the last play they had, Dotson's open there too. Now Dotson felt horrible after the game. He lingered on the sideline by himself, just kind of kneeled down on the sidelines, and clearly it bothered him. The pass was behind and high. It's a tough one, but Dotson said, and Howell said, I've got to give him a better throw. And Dotson said, that's a ball I catch 9 times out of 10. So, that's where they're at. And, they have a field goal blocked. That's where they're at. And that's why I think for you guys, it's got to be quadruply frustrating to sit there and just keep hoping for something better and not getting it. And you deserve it. So, but you got 10 games left. So something's got to change. because otherwise then a lot there, because if it doesn't change, there will be a lot of changes. And the worst thing for Josh Harris, and one thing that he's got to see is more success at home. And that starts next week against Philly. You can't be a owner. He's from this community. So is Mitchell Rales. So is Mark Ein. They're going to hear it from people in this community if this team just keeps losing at home. And so there's a lot going on right now, and there's a lot that needs to change for this to change. And can they do it? Can they do it? I don't know. Again, they've done it in the past. We'll see, because they have guys here. I like Sam Howell. I like Chris Rodriguez. I think he does a nice job running the way they need him to run. I think I like their receivers. McLaurin is a special dude. I mean, some of those catches he makes, he is a fighter. And when he doesn't get the ball early, this is what happens with his offense. Like, I'm going to go back for a story for ESPN and just talking about all the slow starts. One of the things I'm going to look at is, how early do you get McLaurin involved? Why isn't he involved earlier? And what are ways you can get him the ball? So you can find ways to get him the ball if you need to, but he's a guy that's got to get it. He provides a heartbeat for this team. And so you need to get him involved early. You can't force things, but you need to find ways to get him involved early in the game. He had one target in the first half. They were bad in the first half. He had one target. And so that's got to change. That's one of the things that's got to change. But they do have some good players on that offense that you say you can build around that. And you can look at the line. The Giants won with a really bad line. They won a game. So you can win. You just have to do the right things to get there, and then make some of the plays and not get called for all these penalties. I mean, that was the other thing with this line. Way too many penalties. Way too many. So I don't know, folks. There's not much more to say. I think this was another brutal one. I feel for you, and I appreciate you hanging around and listening to me talk about this, because it can't be easy. And there are probably a lot of you who ended up not listening to this because it can't be easy. And I appreciate everybody who does. I appreciate you guys. Listen, this podcast has grown during 4 or 5 turbulent years for this franchise. I have yet to cover a team with a winning record while doing this podcast, and yet it continues to grow because of your passion. So I don't take that for granted. So I appreciate it. Anyways, I'll be back on Tuesday doing some film review of what God knows what. And then I'll be back Tuesday night with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders, at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Join us there. Therapy Tuesday. A lot of things to talk about. A lot of venting, I'm sure, on your end to do. So I'll talk to you next time.